Hello, I'm Fantastic and Fantastic, and today I'm going to be doing the April Question Time Answers video. So, I appreciate each and every one of you ladies and gentlemen who asked interesting and exciting questions. The responses seem to be getting larger with each month, which is definitely wonderful, and the topics presented here are a bit more diverse, I'd say. At the same time, as a preface, I'm going to be reading your comments in chronological order. So in the case of Travo, who asked the very first question of, is cereal a soup? I'll be answering it first and going all the way through. So if you ask your question on a certain day, you can kind of possibly guesstimate where or so your question might, or your answer might be in this video, because this will probably take quite some time. I think there are 65 questions in total. So for Travo, is cereal a soup? Now, Pancake, I asked this question to Pancake, and she says no because it wasn't cooked. But when you think about it, a soup can have, well, a liquid and physical, well, like solid contents, and you put them together. So in a sense, I feel like it's kind of a soup. Is it the kind of soup I'd want to have all the time with dinner? No, but maybe it can be a soup. I'm not sure Travo is the person who asks, is a hot dog a sandwich, or how many holes does a straw have? Some interesting questions I get asked every month. It always makes me chuckle, so thank you, Travo, for that. DG says, what team can hit the highest damage and can do it consistently? Well, in theory, Amon can hit 10,000 attack multiplier if you're skilled enough, but is that a viable thing? Not really, but if you want big numbers, that's big numbers. Same with color cross leaders on 7x6. You get big numbers because you have a big board. Kinda Divine says, they just want to say thank you for always making content because you make them pick up pad again. How did I get into pad? Well, I appreciate your comment and your kind words, and I actually got into pad by reading a newspaper. I was transiting home and I picked up a newspaper. This is what I did because I didn't have a smartphone. I actually had a very dumb phone. I had a tablet but wasn't used much. And basically, I was reading the newspaper and I was like, there's this new wild, crazy, exciting game in Japan that's just smashing all financial records for profits. And I was like, it must be good because I love video games. And then I went home that evening, downloaded it, and then I obviously got addicted. Raul Bastida says, if I could time travel to witness any historical event in the past, what event would I want to go and see? That is truly a difficult question because, I feel like a lot of history does definitely get distorted because history is written by the winners. So if you go back hundreds or thousands of years, it may not necessarily be painted a very accurate picture of what life was actually like. So obviously being able to time travel in that regards would be interesting. But in that same breath, I don't really feel like any of those time periods necessarily are going to be that appealing for myself. There's obviously so much disconnect. And if I'm in my current health situation, I can't really walk around or explore. The fact that I got injured in this era is probably the best thing that could happen because there are so many things I can still do with my life, whereas before I couldn't. But let's say hypothetically I was healthy. And I think for myself, if I can go to any particular historical event, it would be go to a time period in the 70s, 80s, because I like disco, I like classic rock. I think it would be an absolutely wild and great experience to have just going to those, say a discotheque, and if I could dance and do all those wonderful stuff, a wonderful fun time. It's the music I like. Puns were much more popular, I feel, because they weren't so much overused. So I feel like I'll be quite punny and maybe I'll be quite a hit. Who knows? But then again, there's a lot of obviously downsides. The excessive smoking is something I can't stand. I don't like tobacco smoke. Never tried it before. Never intend to. So there are obviously going to be downsides there. Maybe the fact that I'm half Asian might have some issues as well because there's still probably some subtle racism in some ways. Either way, just going there for that interesting atmosphere of a disco place where they play the music I actually want to hear. That would be an interesting experience for myself. And the reason for that is I do have a turntable. I do listen to it on a regular basis. So it'd be just interesting to see all of this happening when it's current technology, so to speak. Arth Drew says, what is my go-to team for clearing monthly quest dungeons? Usually I would co-op with myself and I would use things with bonus combos or 7x6, and I just bring all the slew of various counters needed, Cloud, Blind, Poison, Awoken Bind Clear, Unable to Match Orb Effect, Follow-Up Attack, Auto Follow-Up Attack. The point is, just make it as brainless as possible. And usually, having the bigger board, multiple bonus combos with the leader skill tends to make life much easier. Sometimes rainbow teams seem to be the most efficient because you can just kind of autopilot and go on matching on a 7x6 board, and things just end up dying anyways. Thomas Walker says, were I ever big into card games such as Pokemon, Digimon, Yu-Gi-Oh, or Magic the Gathering? They used to play Yu-Gi-Oh and Magic the Gathering themselves and collected the others. I never did, unfortunately. I did have some Pokemon cards. I still have my Pokemon cards downstairs, but I never got heavily into it. There's a cost hurdle. Like, I was born in 1990, I guess if this is a good way to illustrate it. So I'm 31 years old now. And Pokemon came out when I was like, I think just under 10. So I don't have any like disposable income. I don't have income. I'm 10 years old. So like I couldn't really buy much for myself. So those trading card games I never really got into because I didn't have, well, disposable income to acquire them, so I never just got into them. But nowadays, if I look at myself, I love board games, and if I see a board game I like, I oftentimes will think if it's worth it, but I will be much more likely to be able to at least acquire it at this point in time. So like I collect different stuff, I guess, nowadays. I also kind of collect books, it seems, which is, I guess, a reasonable thing, and I act as a pseudo library. I just lend out my books to my family and friends, so everyone's happy in that regards. Dylan Highlander says, what are some of the better 5-star monster teams for challenge dungeons? They never really build 5-star units, and April's challenge dungeons seem impossible. I haven't looked at those yet, but generally speaking, a lot of the 5-star cards that tend to be stronger, for instance, if they can transform, like say Lampede and Polone, they're obviously a bit more like over the top, so to speak, or any events where there's a higher Magic Stone price tag associated. Like for instance, the Monogatari event that happened recently, the 5-star cards are actually much stronger than the average 5-star card will be. Same with Monster Hunter. There's a good chance a lot of the Monster Hunter 5-star cards are a bit stronger compared to the other 5-stars you could possibly encounter. So it's a matter of like when you roll in these events, keep everything, because like I said, things might have certain merits or value. Like I remember a lot of times I would use Lamp, and Lamp probably could still clear quite a bit of content because as a leader, they still can pump out big damage. They have auto follow attack, they've got high damage, they have good bulk, like they do quite a few things in those regards. So like I've oftentimes defaulted to like Lamp or other miscellaneous collab cards. Candy BM says, what kind of songs do I listen to? Well, I kind of pseudo-answered that beforehand, but what's my favorite artist? So, my favorite artist of all time is Supertramp. It's a band that came out in the very early 70s, and they just gained notoriety like mid-early 70s to like late 70s. And they created quite a few songs that it's a possible you might know. Like, they wrote the song Give a Little Bit, there's Breakfast in America, there's Take the Long Way Home, the Logical Song. Quite a few songs that you might possibly know, but for myself, I'm going to kind of like twist this question a little bit. Like, if I were to be stranded somehow on a desert island and I only can bring one album with myself, I would bring Supertramp's Crime of the Century album. It's a magical album of 8 songs. I know everyone by heart. I could sing along poorly. I could dance poorly, but I know everything that's going to happen to it. So it's kind of like comforting just having like that, like you know what's going to happen. And it tells quite an interesting story as well, and I enjoy stories. So for myself, that is my most significant album and subsequently most favorite artist. It's the artist I've listened to for the longest time. I got into like classic rock when I was like 14, 15, when I discovered my parents' turntable, took it out of storage, started using it. Do I like singing and dancing? Well, I'm not sure if I like singing. I'm a terrible singer, according to Pancake. It's not the best thing. I'm not sure why that's the case. I feel like I have a strong narration and oration voice, perhaps because I know when to put emphasis and like highlight or stress certain syllables or words. It just makes it a bit more interesting to listen to. But for some reason, it all falls apart when I'm singing. And Candy says they also seen the Paris or London Bridge falling down on part of that one video, Musicians Club, where you and your Pancake were doing that. It's pretty interesting. Oh, this is probably from a tremendously long stream ago. But yeah, I think I would sing and I'm happy. Is it good quality? No, but maybe, hopefully my enthusiasm becomes infectious and people find it more entertaining. Shade XVII says, do I have a favorite pad team I like to use? I don't really have a favorite pad team. It's just more so like what is currently going to work well for the dungeon at hand. But I do have a preference for watcher teams because blue is my favorite color. So on possibly like a weird subliminal level, I just gravitate towards those teams. Chicken Hop asks, do I like it when people sub to me? I love it when people sub to me. And Chicken Hop, as a fun story, comes to my Twitch stream usually once a month, asks the same question, I give the same response of, I love it when people sub to me, and then they subscribe to me on Twitch. I look forward to seeing you every single month, Chicken Hop. Harito says, how long can I keep this streak going? How can someone send me fan art and such? Well, you can message me through Discord, and if it's whatever, you can message me through Discord, and that's probably the easiest way to share content with myself. And I feel like I may have answered, but if I didn't, I apologize for that. But I look forward to hopefully having a follow-up from you from Discord, Harito. David Smith asks, which awakening was truly groundbreaking? Follow-up attack, VDP, 7 combo, 10 combo, heal, TBA killers, etc. I'd say follow-up attack was probably the most game-changing awakening, because up until that point, Arena 3 and Coliseum 1 had some resolve spawns. Most notably, Coliseum had multiple resolve spawns. And it was so difficult to overcome them. You had to have damage control. Like, say, I use Meridionalis for the no Skyfall clause. I could kind of math out my damage output, and gravities. So it was a unique playstyle for sure. But at this point in time, like, obviously follow-up attack now has become auto follow-up attack, but it just changed how we played pad, because now we could overcome resolve spawns efficiently. So I definitely feel like follow-up attack was the most game-changing one, because resolve at least came out before void, I think. I could be mistaken, but I think resolve was definitely here before damage void. Joshua says, "Fantastic. How do I look so gosh darn handsome?" Well, I have Pancake to thank for my haircut. She cut my hair. I'm so much more aerodynamic. It was outrageously bushy. I had my hair going into my eyes, and that's not something I ever experienced beforehand. And they follow up with that saying, "Also, they know I stated in an earlier video that I don't have a favorite card. In spite of this, which of the Great Witches would I consider my favorite so far?" Well, for Mantastic, I traded it for Fasca because I didn't have it. And for Fantastic, I got Norza because they didn't have Norza. They had a Fasca. They have two Fascas, actually, but they didn't have Norza. So, like, of all the Great Witches, I feel like art-wise, I like Norza. It's blue. Surprise, surprise. I just naturally like blue things more. So I guess maybe Norza would be my favorite. And I just like her kit as a whole. Like, she just makes... It's kind of fun playing an efficient system team, and she does make that definitely much more enjoyable. And I finally have two Norzas now in Mantastic, so I could potentially relive all those glorious double Norza builds. And then speaking of Norza, Let Me Be says, "What is a good Norza Velkhana team?" Well, it all depends on the dungeon you are playing through. But regardless of the dungeon you are playing through, you need to make sure you bring a 2 or 1 turn cooldown active skill card to loop the Norza's active skill, which oftentimes will be a duplicate Norza of herself. Mi Cook Opa says, "The item they got from the last 2 story missions, what are they good for?" Are we talking about the evolution material to evolve, like, the Celestials? Because, like, Haku has, like, some modest gentle leadership potential. You're talking about the multiple dragon killer card. Well, it's a multiple dragon killer card, so they just kill dragon type spawns. That's the main appeal. But clearing the story modes, I say the main benefit is, well, A, the magic stones you get per level, and then the big final reward, which can vary from, like, pluses, more magic stones, lots of Tamadras, that sort of thing. Daniel Cow says, "Are there any pad cards I wish I existed? Like, for instance, they personally wish they had a viable Heart Cross leader because they're fun." I'm not sure, like, about, like, particular cards, like, let me think. Like, archetypes of cards, like, play styles I think would be interesting. Like, Heart Crosses definitely would be interesting, but the drawback of Heart Crosses or any, like, specific pattern matching cards is that it's very easy to mess up, and if you don't have enough effective health, or really just health, so to speak, to tank hits without your Heart Cross or specific pattern, it's going to be problematic. Like, for instance, Fatalis has a large health multiplier stat and some damage reduction. So, like, even though he doesn't match an L, he still can leverage the big health stat. So it does give him some survivability in those regards. But I honestly feel like those chunky matching style leaders need a 7x6 pairing or a way to swap into 7x6 to truly make them viable. Because if you have these big chunky patterns, you can't necessarily get the combos or, like, squeeze in other things like VDP, follow-up attack, whatever else you might need. RickyFCS asks 2 questions. Firstly, why do we get some of the collabs easily brought to North America unlike others? It just comes down to licensing issues. It's a financial dilemma, so to speak, on Gung Ho's part. They have to determine whether or not paying for the licensing will be a justifiable expense for the revenue they could generate from the new event coming out. That's just the main answer I can give. There's not much else I really can state about that. Secondly, from their experiences reading many books, what kind of tropes annoyed themselves, or ones they just hate it when it appears in the books? Well, things that I dislike in books are, well, love stories. I don't really, like, maybe I don't read truly great romantic novels. Like, and sometimes romance crops up randomly in a book, and maybe it's just because I've read some young adult books and they just don't handle romance well. Like, I just don't need that. It doesn't advance the plot. It doesn't help anything along those lines. And speaking of advancing the plot, another thing that I strongly dislike is when the author just doesn't actually advance the plot. They just indulge themselves in too much excessive world building or internal monologues. A good example of that is the second book for the Dune series. There's just an excessive amount of internal monologues and not enough actual plot advancements. That book could be boiled down to maybe like almost a third of the pages, and you still at least have whatever message is trying to be conveyed. Another example which kind of let me down was the fourth Hyperion book, the fourth and final one. It was like 800 pages, a lengthy book, but you could take out 200 to 300 pages, maybe more, and the message won't be lost because it's just too much excessive world building, not enough actual plot advancement and development. So those are the two things that I find problematic when I read books, and if those things crop up and they become too apparent, it makes it much harder to read through it. Maybe that's possibly why sometimes I enjoyed like Philip K. Dick books, because yes, there is world building, but they're short books and you go fast through them. PandaBlender says, hey Mantastic, how is Momtastic? Haven't seen her on video for a while. She is still playing Pad. She's actually past 2,700 days if I'm not mistaken. Like, she doesn't visit as often, I guess, because COVID and all those reasons and whatnot. But also at the same time, when she does visit, we tend to do other things. We still enjoy Pad, we still talk about Pad, but we've transitioned over to like more like board game in terms of like what we do when we spend time together. Like for example, like the weekend I saw my mom and dad, which was great, and we all played Dune Imperium, which is a fantastic board game. It's great with 3 or 4 humans. Wonderful time. But the point of the matter is, those kinds of experiences what we're just kind of pursuing a bit more nowadays. And she's also reading the books that I read. She just finished the first Dune book, which is like a monstrously long novel in itself. She's read Hyperion 1 and 2. She's read a bunch of other interesting books that I've recommended. So we have quite a few other ways to spend time together, which is nice. Next question. Have I ever thought of filming those significant other Q&A videos of Pancake? It'd be cool to know more about them all. Possibly, like, it's not a terrible idea. Like, Pancake, if she does want to show herself on camera, she might, and maybe we'll do something like that in the future. So it's not a bad idea, PandaBlender. I appreciate that. Nick Froming says, does Palamute have any useful applications? Isn't that the Monster Hunter weapon assist we can get through Black Event medals? It's like a skill boost weapon you can acquire if you have no other possible options, but at the same time, I feel like Chinese Celestials solve skill boost so efficiently. Like, I don't feel like it's necessary from a practicality point of view. If you like the Orb skin, or you just don't have any skill boost weapons and you don't want to be bothering to make, say, the Chinese Celestial earrings, maybe it could have some merits, but the cost is pretty high, I feel. X Darren says, do I watch anime or play games that Pad does collabs with? Sadly, no. I don't actually consume any anime. I don't consume too much online content. As weird as it sounds, I try to limit my screen time. Like, the board games, the reading of books, those are ways for me to like not look at screens. So I don't necessarily I don't consume anime. It's just a weird thing. I do watch Netflix with Pancake like in the evenings. We might watch like an episode here and there. We're currently watching Peaky Blinders, which is quite enjoyable overall. But no, I don't watch anime. Gaming Asian says, any collabs do I think we'll be getting from JP? Your guess is as good as mine. Like, I don't know like the gung-ho licensing practices. It's impossible to predict what could possibly come to North America. 3DSI says, have I seen Shura 3 at all? I've looked at a couple of videos. It looks outrageous, and like cheesing seems to really be the best way to approach it for the most part. But at the same time, JP did have many other cards we don't have access to, and there's no real sense in stressing out about a dungeon that's not going to come to North America for at least probably a couple of months, I feel. Maybe a month or two. Like, it's just not worth stressing, because we're going to get new content, we're going to get new cards, new evolutions, new buffs, so we'll have brand new toys to possibly tackle it at the same time. And as for Ultra Realm 2, I've been very close to clearing on stream several times. Just some unfortunate things have happened lately, which is sad, but I'm using like Fatalis 7x6 swap, and then I'm also using like a Crab 7x6 swap with Velkhana, and both of them have got to gills, and just unfortunate things have happened when hard orbs wouldn't appear or other sad things. Either way, I'm very close, and it's still enjoyable to stream them because it's an exciting dungeon in that sense. Adhonic Sunder says, what do I recommend for endgame players who are capable of clearing some of the difficult dungeons but are lacking 1 or 2 of the key cards to beat dungeons like AR-S2? Well, Alt Shura 2 is just incredibly difficult at this point in time, and there's no there's no need to rush to clear stuff. Like, clearing stuff as soon as they are released obviously gives a certain degree of personal satisfaction, but Pad, like, for the most part, is a personal progression game where it doesn't matter, quote-unquote, how much you have cleared as long as you are enjoying yourself. Yes, the devil title is a cosmetic thing, but again, if those cosmetic things are not necessarily meaningful, there's no need to rush through stuff. But at the same time, you might keep trying it. Like, what hurdles are you facing in that dungeon, I guess, is a good question to ask. Like, why are you not able to overcome it? What parts are giving you hard times? And then they follow up saying, would it just be best to save and roll hard in key events because paths getting kind of boring with Sure 1 being too easy and Sure 2 not possible? Then yeah, saving is definitely the best course of action. Like, if you are like, it sounds like you're an endgame player of a reasonably well-developed box, you don't need to roll in every single event as it comes out because you have more than enough toys to address the vast majority of stuff you are playing through. So with that in mind, like for myself, I tend to hoard up stones and then roll heavily in an event where I feel it will advance my progress. Like Monogatari event, I rolled reasonably hard because I was hoping to get those cards. They gave me lots of new and powerful toys for sure, and that's kind of the similar thought process I feel like you should be possibly employing, Sundar. Random Donald says, hey, Fantastic, their girlfriend and them have been playing Pad together. This week we rolled Monster Hunter Collab together and she got way luckier than me. How do you cope with your girlfriend having better rolling luck than you? Well, you should be happy for her because not only did it make her happy, but you can play with her account if you really wanted to. You could say, hey, babe, can we swap accounts for a day? I use yours, you use mine, that's what you do. Or you just self-co-op. You can just play with the two devices at the same time. Like, I sometimes can possibly get sad if Fantastic rolls better than Mantastic, but then I think about it, they're both kind of like, they're both my accounts, and I can use them interchangeably. So, like, for my most recent streams, I stream, like, sometimes on Mantastic, sometimes on Fantastic, because they have different cards and different tools and options, so it can create more interesting play styles, so to speak. So, I would be happy that my significant other rolled well, because you can still touch her account, I'm pretty sure. Eric Lee says, is it worth grinding out stones slowly as a budget player for staple monsters like Hino, or should you just go for strong events? Just go for strong events. You don't need to, well, when you grind out stones, you should be clearing all the dungeons you have available to get those free one-time stones, but are you meaning like rolling hard in like lackluster events to just kind of get cards to help fill out a box? No, you should really be rolling for the better events. And if you are a more budget player and you don't have many options, Super Godfests tend to be strong options when they are more favorable rolling odds, or just stronger collabs, or especially events where you don't have anything. If you roll in a collab that's a good collab and you don't have any of the cards, rolling several times will oftentimes produce multiple new cards, which in turn can advance your progression overall. Curran says, how do I get to the second Toragon? I know you get one for Monster Change. I don't remember how you get it. It's probably a reward for like maybe a monthly quest, limited time dungeon, is a reward of some kind if you can't figure out a way to acquire them. That's usually the case. Elon Musk asks, what would be the most broken OP awakening you could possibly put on a card? Well, adding in additional damage is always meaningful if you have some way to possibly do that. Or conversely, finding ways to add in more bulk. Like, the L Shield Awakening, I feel like is somewhat underrated. If you have enough on the team, it can actually provide a meaningful amount of damage reduction, but of course not many cards have it, that sort of idea. So like maybe we see a more like universal like damage reduction style awakening that could be interesting, because right now bulk tends to be the most valuable aspect of a team. If you are tanky and durable and you can withstand punishment, you tend to be able to clear more content. So having other ways, not just team HP, like other ways to layer in effective health might be an interesting way to have. And of course, having a weapon assist that just can layer in like say a 7 combo would definitely be outrageous, or a VDP, or any of the truly notable awakenings we don't have yet. Lokahi Kanach, I can't pronounce your name, unfortunately, says, hey, Fantastic, thank you for all your work you put in to help the rest of the PAD community. Since they are kind of similar franchises, am I a Pokemon fan as well? I guess I do like Pokemon, but I didn't grow up playing video games. I never had a Game Boy growing up. I never had like a console like N64 or PlayStation 1. I had none of those things growing up, so I never had much exposure to them. My TV time was actually quite limited, so like I did watch Pokemon on occasion, but I never really got into those franchises, so to speak. Like never, which is I guess maybe good or bad. Like I didn't like buy tons of Pokemon cards. I didn't spend all that money on Game Boys, but then again, it's like I didn't know what I was missing out either potentially. Dino Kanha says, is PAD a better game compared to 3 or 4 years ago? Is there a golden era or time, which is one, and why? Well, I'd say PAD is definitely much more accessible nowadays. We're given significantly more magic zones. We can roll so much more often. We have much better quality of life features. There are story modes to at least possibly teach players how to play the game and give extra rewards. There are monthly quests, which we didn't have at some point in time. So Pad is definitely a much better game now compared to before. And nowadays, I'd say it is quite strong. We're getting new content on quite a regular basis, new dungeons, new events, new cards, just new toys to play around with. So I feel like Pad is doing well at this point in time. And the other like golden era, so to speak, that I can really foresee is when Arena 3 was really the big dungeon, because at that point we had a nice balancing point of difficult content with tools that we could tackle to acquire it. But at the same time, a lot of those clears for Arena 3 were a bit more skill-based, so to speak, because you didn't have all these cool tools like, say, like Fujin style active skills, follow-up attack, etc. Like you had to like be creative of how you actually tackled these dungeons. So it was an interesting time as well, but at the same time it was definitely much more grindy by comparison. Now, BP says, do I plan on doing more 3-player viewers? I did do more, especially when content was quote-unquote slower, but at least nowadays now that I have Fantastic on a new, well, it's not a new device. I got a new device for Fantastic from Armored Bunny Bear. Thank you so much for getting me a new tablet. But I was able to transfer Fantastic to my old device. So now I can stream with Fantastic. So now I have significantly more options and card things I can do. So I'm able to do like much, like obviously playing in solo mode, but I can like stream like Shura 2 attempts or like unique Shura 1 runs, that sort of idea, because I have more options. So like I feel like sometimes I default to 3-player when there is like less exciting stuff to play. It's not that I don't enjoy it, but like right now I'm kind of excited because I can play with Fantastic and they have quite a few new toys to play around with at this point in time. Ivanor Pineda has 3 comments, and I'll read them one by one. They said their hope the wrists are feeling better. They're like, they still hurt. I did quite a bit of my wrists yesterday, and they were hurting last night. Like I'm constantly rubbing and grinding them. Like it's just an unconscious thing I do. It's frustrating because like I already have so much hesitation when I move. Every time I move, I actually think before I think to myself, is it worth this movement? Is it worth doing XYZ movement for how much pain I'm going to have with it? And it's annoying. And I'm starting to do that for my wrists now, and it's frustrating because like there's so much like unnecessary stress at the same time. But either way, I do my best to minimize it. And again, reading books, playing board games, these things don't use my wrists. Instead of like playing like games on my computer, for instance. Sometimes I used to play like Slay the Spire, like a lot of rogue style deck builder games, Monster Train, those sort of things. Like I did play them and I do enjoy them, and some auto battlers, but like it's still clicking, still screen, so I'm trying to do my best to minimize it. And they also say they're dependent on my advice for the game, so thank you so much for all the wonderful content and sharing my wisdom, and have a good one. I do appreciate your kind words. Like it does make me feel better, and does like it kind of like makes me feel happier. I mean, I'd like to feel happy. I think everyone wants to feel happy. They also asked, when do I think we'll be reaching 1,000 monster book entries? I have no idea when that will occur, but that wouldn't be surprising because Pad, at least, like the style of Pad is not to upgrade existing cards, but to release either new cards or new evolutions for existing cards. So like it's not far-fetched to think that there's going to be 10,000 monster book entries. I don't know how high we are at this point in time. And even our Panda, just because I posted this on April 1st, it doesn't mean I'm going to April Fools you all. I've been doing this for a couple of months now, so it's at least a little bit more reliable in that regards. I can't pronounce your first name. Rodriguez George Eduardo says, have I ever tried D&D? And if I did try it, was it a good experience or a weird one? I had a couple of encounters of D&D, and it never really took off necessarily. Like, I do like some story-driven based games, but like it can get a little bit clunky, and maybe perhaps it comes down to the group of people you play with. Like, do you have a good DM, or is like the party you're playing with, so to speak, are they enjoyable people? Does everyone get into the role-playing aspect, or are some people on their phones and half distracted? Like, I think D&D is a very heavily dependent on the group you play with type of game, and you also obviously have to enjoy like that role-playing narrative aspect, which is again not for everyone. I've played narrative story-based games, like I've played quite a bit of Tainted Grail, which is quite a fun story-based driven game. I played Gloomhaven, weaker story, but again, like these games didn't need a DM, and at least for my gaming groups that I have, I'd probably be the DM, and I don't want to be the DM. I want to play the game itself. And then, are there any good leaders to pair with Gillian besides Gillian? Dual Gillian tends to be quite efficient because the health and damage reduction is all tied. The damage reduction is all tied to being above half health. But if I'm not mistaken, the red saber, the red common rider leader, it can be a possible synergistic pairing with Gillian. Gabe Gonzalez says, do I think cards that make orbs on a one-turn cooldown like the Crab Girl are key to making blob or hungry teams viable, consistent? Yes, that is the greatest way to offset them. Like, I'll use a more extreme example. Mikaj teams need 3 dark combos to truly shine and function. And Chris is a one-turn transforming card that creates 6 dark orbs every turn. And because of that, you're much more able to actually survive. So yes, I definitely feel like one-turn cooldown cards are pivotal to the success of a lot of high-end teams because they give you a benefit on a regular basis. Like, for instance, and then you can inherit something over top of them to have a high-impact active skill turn 1, and then just rely on the base skill later on. Gabe Gonzalez also asked, is the new story mode chapters worth doing without the big bonuses? It's still worth clearing because, if I'm not mistaken, you clear a floor, you get a magic stone. And where else can you get that many magic stones? So yes, they're definitely worth clearing still. Klexup says, what are my favorite kinds of sandwiches? I seldom eat sandwiches when I really think about it, though. But if I do eat a sandwich, it has to have contrast. And contrast, when I say that, means different textures. A sandwich that's all soft is not enjoyable. Like, it's all kind of too monogamous in the sense that, like, it's just one sensory mouthfeel. You can have different flavors, but it's one experience. But if you have multiple textures, like, say, like, you have a toasted bun, you've got, say, like, maybe a breaded internal ingredient, like, say, like, whatever it may be, like crispy toppings, or you have, like, fried onions, or whatever, like, variety of, like, some hot stuff. You have maybe some cool stuff, like your sauces are cool. You have, like, hot onions or sauteed mushrooms. Like, the point of the matter is, like, having a variety is what makes food interesting for myself. And then they said, if I had 3 Nadekos and had also a perfect sub over Remy or Dante teams, would I trade for Remy or Fasca? I would still trade for Fasca because Remy or Dante teams have a much lower arc potential compared to Nadeko teams. So Fasca would probably open up a much more possibilities for your Nadeko teams by comparison. Duke Nuke says, hi, I've been watching my videos for years. Keep up the great work. I appreciate that. There are concert violinists who plays pad between practice sessions or sometimes before performances to relax. How do I feel about classical music or music in general? Well, I have nothing against classical music. It's not my desired genre. I like classic rock, but I like Trans-Siberian Orchestra and Electric Light Orchestra. And both of those bands have, well, orchestra in the name, but they feature an orchestra ensemble. Like, for instance, I've seen both of these in concert. They're magical concerts in themselves, but they oftentimes hire out the local orchestra, so like the VSO for Vancouver would be, and they bring them in to help basically be like their background music, so to speak, for whatever their concert needs are. So I think that's pretty cool. And like, it's interesting because, like, for instance, especially Trans-Siberian Orchestra, they do a lot of interesting twists on classical music. They incorporate more like rock opera into it. It's pretty cool, and they have talented singers. They also say they've been to Vancouver a few times to play with the symphony there, and I should check them out if I haven't. I have gone at one point in time in my distant past, and it was enjoyable, but at the same time, it's not an experience I probably would continuously seek out. But a completely unimportant fun fact is they can think of at least one musician in the orchestra that also plays pad, and they're pretty sure they watch my videos. So that's pretty sweet as well, Duke Nuke. Luke says, what is the current meta? The current meta favors cards who have massive amounts of effective health because they can survive mechanics, and eventually, if you can't die, you can kill stuff. That's the general basic logic, I would say. Bob Chenner says, will we have double damage cap latent in the future? How do I think it will affect gameplay in the future? Do I think monsters will have like double the effective health or even bigger enemy shields? It wouldn't be surprising if the effective health from bosses do increase because the damage cap latent does improve that. But at the same time, not every card can use it, and you can't just slap on damage cap latents on every single card because they take up 6 latent slots. So yes, I definitely feel like they will be raising the effective health needs for sure for bosses, but at the same time, players will gain new access to damage solutions. Sam Chan says, have I ever bitten my nails before? And the answer is no. I've fortunately never had that habit. But how would I stop myself biting my nails? And it's hard for me to say because I've never actually bit them, so I've never had the desire, so I can't really like fully like empathize or understand your situation. But they say they have a bad habit of biting their nails. They already know it's unsanitary. They can get words I can't pronounce and can mess up their teeth. What's my opinion of this? Well, it should be hopefully something you can try and stop. Like, it could be like you bite your nails as a coping mechanism, and perhaps what you could do, again, I'm not a psychologist or any health expert, but what you could do is when you find the need or urge to bite your nails, write it down and mention why you had this urge. And then do this for a couple of days, or like several instances where this occurs, and see if a pattern emerges. You might possibly spot that like you tend to bite your nails when, say, you are stressed, and it could be when you're stressed about XYZ event in your life. That sort of idea. Or maybe you're doing it because you're idle and bored and you don't have anything to do. Maybe you want to need something to faffle and fiddle with. You might be replacing one vice with another, but like you just need to, like, for instance, figure out like why this is occurring. They also asked, have I done drugs and drink alcohol before? Never done drugs. I've actually been really good about that. I've been quite diligent about leading a healthy lifestyle. Even before I got injured, I was actually quite diligent about eating well, etc. I have drank alcohol. Like, I do enjoy a nice glass of wine, not a bottle. I like to share. I don't drink that much. But I seldom drink nowadays. It's an expensive thing, and like it's not truly necessary. And maybe I've become slightly quote unquote snobbish, but like cheap bottles of wine I don't enjoy. Like, you got to spend a modest amount to get something of value and quality to taste good. I'm quite picky when it comes to food and things I put in my mouth, and it's no different when it comes to wine. When did I first try it? Well, I actually probably tried little bits of alcohol like when I was like living with my parents in my like late teens. Like, it's not terrible, like a sip here or there just to know about it. But when I really started drinking, I was at least 19, which is the legal age in Vancouver. So that's when I did start drinking alcohol. It was in my first year of university. And how often do I do it? Well, nowadays, like I said, I barely drink. Lawrence Productions says they recently started working a job that they do not like. Any tips on how to do this long term? 3 years ago, they tried working but ended up quitting after 6 months. They think money shouldn't be a main motivator, and they tried going to school to get their BA degree, but the job they want still isn't available. Why isn't it still available to you? What is your dream job, actually? That might be helpful. I'm going to keep reading, though. They want to become a video editor, programmer, board game designer, or a dog sitter. Any tips on what I should do to achieve your goals? Well, I don't have any experience in any of these industries, to be honest. I'm not necessarily the best when it comes to like the business world, I'd say. Like, I don't know like the standard job practices are. But the thing is, money is a means to achieve whatever you need to do, or a means to survive. So for like these things that you've listed, what schooling do you need to have to achieve these goals? Like, what kind of education do you need? And at the same time, it's not as much, well, okay, it is important what you know, but who you know is arguably more important. Like, you could be the greatest, like you could have incredible knowledge, but if you don't have a business network, you're going to have a tough time. And that's something that maybe you need to start focusing on, like building up that business network, building up contacts, having people in those industries that you know and hopefully see you in a favorable light. That might be something that could be beneficial. And they continuing saying, also, they recall that I said I can't do a full-time job because of the conditions I have. In the future, how will I be financially stable? Well, I have Pancake, which definitely makes life much easier. I made lots of good decisions when I was younger. Like, I never traveled, I never bought a car, I never wasted my money. So, like, before I get injured, like, at least I was responsible. And because of all that, I never have, like, this desire or need to be wasteful. I'm quite a frugal individual. So, like, the key is to live within your means. And I know, like, my budget, so to speak, is quite small. But at the same time, I set my expectations small as well. In a marriage, is it ideal that both partners should be financially stable? I feel like both partners should be contributing, not necessarily financially stable. Like, for my situation, like, I can make a bit of money, not very much. Pancake will definitely be like the primary breadwinner, so to speak, in the future, and that's okay. Like, I don't have like a fragile ego in those regards, but at the same time, everyone needs to contribute as best they can. Like, for instance, like, I'm at home more, and like I do spend lots of time in pain. I can't do too much. A lot of times I'm just sitting, not doing much, and it can be frustrating. But I have tasks that I'd like to try and achieve throughout the day, and I get it done, albeit slowly, but done nevertheless. Like, for instance, like when Pancake like goes to work, she comes home, many times dinner is waiting or like largely prepped, and it's just a matter of like just doing the last little bits of cooking or heating up to really get it on the table. Or sometimes it's even waiting on the table for her. She is currently going back to school to upgrade herself for paralegal status, and she has like work and then classes at home right after. So on those days, which are Wednesdays, I actually oftentimes have the food already prepped and cooked. And then when she comes home, she has a couple of minutes. I can put I put the food on her table and she can just eat while listening to her lecture. So like it's a matter of sharing the workload as best as possible, because you also think of like the opportunity costs of like if you are working, you make X dollars per hour, and then if you are doing house tasks, like you're taken away from that time, so to speak. And then if myself and Pancake have kids, how will I intend to support them? Well, Pancake will be doing well. And like I said, I made strong decisions when I was younger, so I haven't screwed myself over with debt. I don't have student loans, etc. Like I didn't do all like silly things like that. I didn't have student loans. I was just fortunate in those regards, and I didn't waste money by traveling. Is she okay at being the main breadwinner? Yes, she is. My parents will pass away eventually. Hope it doesn't happen soon. I hope so as well. If my fiance divorces me in the future and my parents pass away, how will I live without money? Well, that's a terrible case scenario because, parents will pass away at some point. Like, death is just a natural part of life. But I don't foresee myself getting a divorce. We love each other tremendously. But if you really think about it, there's oftentimes going to be at least a tiny bit of inheritance, and you can always leverage stuff. Like, even if you get XYZ amount of money, if you put it away in a intelligent manner, you can invest wisely. It's not impossible to create a potential income stream, even out of a smaller amount of money, if you just build it up over time, which hopefully you do. And then that's their biggest fear in life, not being financially stable. Well, that is definitely a valid fear overall, Lawrence Productions. And you need to find out what you want in life. You need to set your goals realistically. Not everyone can have a mansion. I'm not going to have a mansion. I know that. And because it's not a dream or goal of mine, my financial expectations are adjusted accordingly. Harst Beat says, if I like transgender people, does this make me not straight? They like femininity but not masculinity, and the YouTube is auto-deleting their comments, so they have to post this 4+ times and reword the question to make it appear on my comment section. That's interesting that YouTube does filter and censor out words. It's not my doing. I only get rid of very obvious spam, which is really just links to some things. But Harst Beat, you are entitled to like what you like. My logic is, if you're not harming yourself and you're not harming others, it's probably an okay thing to do. So, are you concerned about labels on your own self? Who are you trying to impress or appease from this question? Are you trying to justify or rationalize your behavior for yourself or for others? Because if you're okay with it, does it really matter what other people think? Curry Water says they met a girl last year and they're in love with her. They want to do a home run with her, but they're scared on what she will think of me. How do they get comfortable trying to be more intimate with someone you love? I feel like if I suggest that to her, she will think I'm using her for the reproduce method. I've never heard that before. But it is not that. I love her very much and would be happy to start a family with her someday. Also, on another note, do you think using people for the reproduce method is immoral? What's your view on this? Well, the key with any relationship is open and honest communication. If you cannot convey how you feel towards someone, that might be an issue in itself. And at the same time, if you do truly love this girl, why are you not telling her these things? If she loves you back, which is, I'm going to assume the situation in this case here, because you've said, it sounds like you met her, maybe you're together. You need to be able to communicate with her. And what you wish to do with your time with each other is your own personal business. Like I said, if you're not harming yourself nor harming others and you're okay with each other's actions, it's okay to use, I guess, the reproduce method if you may, but just, use the proper protection if that's the case. But open and honest communication is important. Tell her how you feel, what things that you want to do. How important is intimacy in a relationship for yourself? And again, you need to figure out how important is intimacy for your partner. Drummer Sting says, do I think it is okay to not go to the doctors ever for a physical checkup? Well, that's kind of an awkward question for me because I see doctors and specialists on a regular basis. So it's kind of a weird question. But I don't think you should be avoiding them for long periods of time. I don't know how often you need to get physical checkups because I get examined on a regular basis. But it's not a terrible thing to do it every once in a while. If you have problems, you should really check them out, I would say. Don't let things get out of hand. But how often do I go to the doctors? I just go all the time. When there's not COVID, I go all the time, unfortunately. I have too many other health problems. But they say they haven't been going for many years, and the reason is because They're scared of needles. When they were younger and they drew their blood, they felt sick and then fainted. That made them super scared of needles. How did I get over the fear of needles? Well, I don't like needles. I'm going to preface it by saying I do not like needles. And when I was young, I didn't like them. I wasn't scared of them. I didn't like them. And then when I got older, I went to a place called Change Pain Clinic, which is a pain clinic. They don't sell pain. They try and treat pain. But no, they actually gave me tons of pain. One of the treatments I did for a year on a weekly basis was trigger point injections. So the process involves up to 4-inch needles being inserted everywhere in your body. So 4-inch needles going into your groin. That's where the big needle was used there. And the goal is to create a violent muscle spasm. It's a spasmic release. It's the most painful experience I've ever had in my life. I would be screaming, didn't cry too much, maybe a little bit to myself, but I would do this. I did this a weekly basis for a year, and there could be 40, 50, 60, 70 injections in one session. So I just had to get over it. I do not like needles. I'm not afraid of them, but I don't like them. But I just got over them. Like, I guess for me, like, pain is relative, and the pain from there is obviously catastrophically high, but most normal needles are not painful whatsoever. Like, a lot of times, like, when they hook up, like, catheters to me or other, like, IVs, I barely notice. It's like, well, that was an inconvenience, but it doesn't bother me. Like, it's all relative, I guess, the pain and other experiences you have. But I couldn't be afraid of needles because I would never have survived those treatments if I was. And speaking of needles, am I going to get vaccinated for COVID-19? I do want to get vaccinated. I'm just incredibly low down on the priority chain. Like, if I'm not mistaken, maybe a couple days ago, in Vancouver, we're still vaccinating people 71 plus years of age. So I'm 31. I'm going to be months away. Anton Hesselink says, do I think the meta will change in about a year or so? The meta will always change. It has to change to keep things interesting. Maybe a new type of card or transforming cards go sell. Well, transforming cards can be countered by like various skill delays floor 1 or just buffing non-transforming cards to be more competitive. Like, you just need to make things stronger. But the meta will always change and evolve. How viable would a skill charge equip be? Well, a skill charge weapon would be great for rainbow teams. It would greatly accelerate the cooldown of many key active skills, but you have to also be mindful of the fact that like this is always going to be a huge boost to rainbow teams. And also, what is the active skill that you inherited on top? Is it going to be a low base cooldown or a high base cooldown? You can make it less powerful by making a lower base cooldown and a weaker effect. That's a way to possibly keep it in check, but it definitely be a huge boon to rainbow teams. Kevin says, if I ask a girl to hang out and she said she is busy, would you think it means that she is not interested? And how would you be able to tell that she is uninterested? Well, you can tell if someone's interested based on how much they respond to you. Like, are you always the one asking questions? Are you always the one starting the conversation? Are they giving one-word answers? Or are they replying and then adding on more to keep the conversation carrying forward? At the same time, it is definitely possible someone can be busy. It is possible. So what you can do is don't just say, do you want to hang out? Just say, hey, do you want to go to XYZ on Friday? Or, hey, or would you prefer Sunday? Give multiple give multiple time options, and if they're saying no to all these on a regular basis, it definitely could mean they're not interested. Like, if you give, like, say, like, I guess for myself, like, when I was trying to meet someone through Tinder, that's how I met Pancake, actually, I would often, like, after we talk, it seems like we can't get along, let's meet in person. What I would do is I would give them 2 different dates, and I let them pick. And if they're really interested in me, they would make probably one of those work, or they would suggest it on their own. If they're not interested, you'll know, because like they will say, no, don't really want to, or busy. And if they're busy on 2 different days, don't put them back-to-back days. Space them out by a modest margin. And if they don't have like a meaningful like excuse, like saying, oh, I've already planned to do something here, or I work that time, etc., you can kind of get an idea. But you should judge their interest level based on how they respond. Are they responding animately, or just like one letter K, or no, that sort of thing. Erica So Fine says, if I were to be in love with someone, how can I get over her? In that way, if a new girl pursues you, you won't come back to your old ex. Well, I feel like you need to determine why you broke up or why your previous relationship ended. What was the cause of that relationship ending? Was it because of like cheating and infidelity? Because that can be very difficult to come back from, assuming it was on their end, it wasn't you who cheated. Or if you cheated, well, it's obviously an indication that you don't love that or care about that person anymore either. I've never cheated. I never intend to either. I'm pretty against that. But you need to figure out, why did the relationship end? Was it because of that? Was it toxic because like you just don't get along anymore? Did you grow apart? What was the reasons for that relationship ending? What kind of feelings are residual there? Did they end the relationship? Did you end the relationship? Was it mutual? That sort of thing. I think it's important to just ask yourselves these questions to figure out why you still possibly hold feelings for your ex. And also, how long ago was it? Like, did you just break up very recently and you haven't had enough, like, quote unquote, like mourning periods, so to speak? Because Eric is so fine says they feel they might have made a mistake. They're still in love with their ex and a new guy pursues them and they rejected him so they can stay with their ex. Does your ex want to be with you, though, I guess is the question. But apparently the answer is no, because the ex says they told them he wants to have his kid. Oh, and he still loves me. Oh, then okay. So, okay. They asked him to hang out, but he claims he is busy. What do you think is the best action for this situation? This is a wild roller coaster. Like, maybe we'll go back to Kevin's question. Give multiple options. Don't just say, like, do you want to hang out? No, say, like, do you want to see me on this date? Or do you want to see me here? And just, you can do all the planning and saying, like, pick the date, the adventure you want to go on, so to speak. You need to communicate with them, but also, like, why did you and your ex break up? Like, what was the reason? Because if it sounds like you still love him and he still wants you to have his kid, it sounds like maybe why did you break up? It sounds a little odd, at least from my point of view. I could be just missing some of the information here. James Miller says, if I made a mistake, do you think the mistake actually helped you in the long run no matter what? Or do you think bad things happen because of human error and nothing to be gained from that? I feel like most mistakes can at least be lessons that you can learn. Like, I do quite a bit of self-reflection because, like, I just sit and, like, just try and be more mindful in that regards. But I try and analyze why this mistake occurred. Like, was it human error? Was it my fault? Was it something beyond my control? And what were the consequences of it? And could it have been avoided? Like, you grow through experience, and oftentimes the most painful experiences are the most beneficial learning experiences because they tend to stand out in your mind, like whatever it may be. So I feel like you shouldn't like think of a mistake as a terrible thing. You should be like looking back and thinking, why did this occur? And it definitely can help potentially because it can definitely shape and mold your expectations and behavior. Tipborn says, what is a good way to spend monster points? Also, any tips for Lucifers tests? Monster points don't have too much value at this point in time. Like, there's not too many things to really buy with them at this right now. Like, mine is just constantly building up. Like, Kuroyuri Loop or 2 Kuroyuris are definitely going to be one of the better things to buy when Gung Ho Collab does come back, if you haven't done so already. But not too many things really are appealing. And then Tiborn says, also, any tips for Lucifer's tests? The best tip I can give you is count your orbs. I'm assuming it's the third puzzle because that's the one that most people fail. So count your orbs and figure out, well, I would count 2 of the colors. So let's say you have 8 blue and 10 red. So you think, where can I put 8 orbs efficiently? Where can I put 10 orbs efficiently? That's something you have to think about to yourself. Because after you put those orbs efficiently, the last color, whatever number of orbs is left over, can be just blobbed in whatever space is remaining. But key is count your orbs and plan out where you want to match. And blobbing is the key. Like, I match 4 combos most of the time, I'd say. Maybe 5, but usually they're big blobs. Connie is back. Connie is utter back here, and Connie is... I swear there was another Connie. I feel like there was. I don't know why I'm so interested now, but did I read this? Maybe not. Because I swear there was. I'm just going crazy, I think. Nope, I'm crazy. I am actually just crazy. It was Erica So Fine. I just got mixed up with the names. Never mind. I don't know why. Connie asks, am I a virgin? The answer is no. What are some unspoken rules of home runs? Well, consent on both parties is the most important thing. And supposedly if you ask for it, the person can get turned off. But if you don't ask for it and it naturally happens, the relationship can be normal. I think the key is open communication. You need to talk about it. Like, you need to set like either ground rules, boundaries, expectations or desires. Like, communication is the most important thing in relationships, and that's what I try and do at Pancake. Like, we sometimes have like arguments and disagreements. It's normal. It's impossible to not argue, but we do it in such a way that we don't let problems build up. If something bothers me, I'll think about it for maybe a couple hours, and if it's not something that I can deal with on my own, like it's usually say like something that she's done wrong, I'll tell her about it. And yes, she may get upset and whatnot, but the problem didn't fester and build up and explode, so to speak, to something that couldn't have been avoided. But we can avoid it by stifling it sooner. Like, instead of making a giant mountain, you just deal with it when it's a little molehill, so to speak. So communication is important. Like, the key is talk about it and don't pressure the other person into anything, Connie. That's what I would say. And then what do I think about home runs of people that I'm not married to? I think it's okay. Again, as long as everyone's consenting, everyone's okay with it, it's not a bad thing to do, at least in my opinion. And then what about having a polygamous relationship? I've never tried one, never really thought of having one. That's just something beyond my scope of imagination, so to speak, because like I'm obviously quite happy with Pancake. And then what do I think about all this? Well, communication is the most important thing. Again, if you're not harming yourself or harming others, it's probably okay to do, but the key is talk about it, and both parties have to be in agreement with it. Shaskas Zen says, what religion do I believe or practice? I'd say I'm much more atheist compared to not. I read tremendous amounts of books, and lots of them have heavy sci-fi themes. A lot of them deal with religion in interesting and unique ways, and it just makes me feel like I'm not religious, so to speak, I guess is the best way to put it. Like, it's okay to be religious. It's okay not to be. Like I said, if you're not harming yourself and you're not harming others, you're not forcing your beliefs and opinions upon others as well, it's probably okay behavior. Do I believe in God? I don't know. Like, I tend to believe in things that I can measure, see, and evaluate, so to speak. So, like, the concept of a higher being is definitely an interesting concept, but it's just hard for me to truly grasp. And then the biggest, I guess, dilemma that I've faced when I've encountered some people is that they tell me, like, it's like my situation, like I got injured, I have health problems. People are like, it's God's plan. And it rubs me the wrong way because it sounds condescending, because I could be like, well, what if our situations were reversed? Would you be this happy and positive about it? Maybe not. Like, I'm suffering every day. Did I do anything necessarily wrong? I don't think so. But either way, do I believe the afterlife is real? It's really hard to say. We don't know. But at the same time, from everything we can witness and see based in the real world, it doesn't seem that there's any evidence of an afterlife actually existing. And then who introduced me to religion if I am religious? I'm not. Like, yeah. But, like, yeah, it's just not something that I follow. But again, I'm not against people who are. And as long as you don't force your beliefs upon me, I'm not going to try and force my beliefs upon you either. Justice League says, what are some good and easy passive incomes they can do? Do you think stocks are good to invest money in? There is no way that we actually know how stocks are going to go. I wish there were ways to teach people on how to make money. School does not do that. What are some ideas that can lead to a person being a billionaire or at least $10+ million? A high-paid job cannot do that for sure. A billionaire must have done something. What do you think they did to make that much money? And why is it so hard to make that excessive amount? Wow, that's a loaded question. Well, money is human construct. Like, we made money to simplify our lives. And in terms of like good and passive easy incomes you can do, I don't think any really exist, because if they were good and easy and whatnot, everyone would be doing it, and therefore that value would diminish. Like, I guess like for like as a job, the way like you're paid is based on how valuable the work you provide, and also usually oftentimes how much schooling went into it. So like, let's use like extreme examples. Like, we'll use like a doctor, like a heart surgeon. Excessive amounts of schooling, virtually no one else can do this job. They're going to be making large amounts of money. It's a very unique, specialized role. By comparison, let's say let's say it's just like an entry-level minimum wage job. In theory, the vast majority of people can do it. Didn't take much training. As a result, the income should be lower. So that's one thing you have to think of. And then on that same note, the way you can advance and upgrade yourself is become more educated. Like, there are plenty of ways to make money out there, and there are definitely creative people who don't have like the heavier education, but education is a reliable way to advance yourself in the financial world. In regards to stocks are a good way to invest money. Individual stocks are definitely much riskier. You're much better off investing with mutual funds, and a mutual fund, and bare-based terms, is basically a giant fund that's managed by a management company, and basically thousands of people contribute their money into it, and then that fund buys up many different stocks, and the distribution is managed by those portfolio managers. It's a safer way to invest compared to one stock because you're rolling the dice, whereas like that mutual fund, say they have 20 different stock, like they're invested in 20 different stocks, let's say. One does poorly, well, that's unfortunate, but you have 19 others to kind of carry the loss, so to speak. And in all honesty, just create a pack, a pre-authorized contribution. And basically every month or payday, you should do it, whatever, like payday is a good way to do it. Every payday, take out XYZ money from your account and put it into a savings vehicle of some kind. And then let's say you do $100 a month, that's $1,200 a year, $6,000 in 5 years, plus whatever interest and growth it made. It's the efficient way to save, and because it's taken out automatically, it becomes a regular bill, and you might forget about it until you look and say, wow, look at that, I've saved up so much money. But it's definitely, I do agree, like it'd be important to teach people how to make money, but more so like there's life skills that could be taught more in school. I haven't been in high school for years, of course, so like I'm pretty sure the curriculum has changed, but it'd be nice to shed some light on it, or like tell and like highlight why education is so important to be. Like, it doesn't have to be like university education, it could be trade school, just something to give yourself more employable skills. In regards to what can lead to someone being a billionaire, it's just a lot of times it can be like they had wealth to begin with, and a lot of times wealth was built up from generations past, or through just owning properties, which is, again, from generations past. Property just makes money. Like, properties are worth so much, and it's just passive income forever, basically. Mountainous Vol says, I am single. What is the best way to get a girlfriend? And what's the best way to attract a girl? What are some of the mistakes that you did in my own relationship, and how would I avoid that? Do I think the best way to get a girlfriend is just to be yourself? Well, I found Pancake by using Tinder. I've met Pancake almost 5.5 years ago, so I don't know what the dating landscape looks like nowadays, but I feel like online dating still works, because when I think about it, it's so efficient. I could see potentially like 100 different girls, and only maybe a couple of them might be interesting to me, and it'll allow me to quickly filter and sift through them, and then you meet them in person, then find out, well, maybe it wasn't the case. Either way, it's efficient. So the best way to meet someone is you have to put yourself out there. So I feel like dating apps might be just the best way to do so. Like, just utilize them. And the way to attract them is you need to have an interesting photo. You have to have something eye-catching. And put an interesting description of yourself. Like, you can just like write some interesting stuff about your, like, just interesting points. Like, you could say like, your favorite color is blue. My favorite album of all time is Supertramp, Crime of the Century. And my 3 most treasured possessions are, I'd say, my turntable and album collection, my miniatures that I have painted, and I don't remember the last one. Shoot. What are my 3 most prized possessions? Turntable, miniatures that I have painted, and Pancake. No, she's not a possession. I don't know. But like, you can do something like that. Like, just put interesting talking points like that, because it shows kind of who you are. Oh, you know, my favorite color is blue. I like that too. But like, just do things like that. Like, just do like weird tidbits of information about yourself. And if this is what I think I did for myself, and if they are interested in yourself, they'll read your bio and they'll comment on one of those topics, and that in itself is a conversational starter. Like, you may have to take the reins, so to speak, but you can ask kind of more thought-provoking questions. Just say like, what is the most interesting thing that you've done in the past week? If you were stranded on a desert island, what album would you bring and why? What is your most precious and treasured possession that you own? Those sort of things. Like, that might be interesting. And again, share those about yourself. Just like lead the conversation, so to speak, because maybe sometimes people are interested, but they could be shy. So if you take a little bit of the lead, so to speak, and they at least reciprocate, it makes it much more enjoyable. What mistakes did I make in my own relationship? And I'd say the biggest mistake is a lack of communication and a lack of honesty. Previous relationship I've had, like, I did the opposite of what I do now, which is not trying to be confrontational, so to speak, in the sense that, like, if a problem occurs, didn't necessarily talk about it, kind of bottled up, just kind of pushed it down, and then eventually it creates like a big tipping point, and it becomes a much more explosive argument by comparison, like just much more unpleasant. So you can circumnavigate that by just like continuously talking about it. So like, let's say Pancake does something that I didn't like, and if it's something that bothers me too much, if I sat on it, so to speak, for an hour or two, I'll tell her about it, and then she'll be like, no, she'll be like, fine, I understand, and then we'll move on. And then the best part is, it's very unlikely that problem comes up again in the future because we both know about it. Something to keep in mind. But another thing that I did that didn't work for myself is I wasn't myself. And I feel like the best policy is to be yourself because you can't lie forever. And for like what I did initially was when I first started using Tinder to meet someone before I met Pancake, like a couple months before that, I didn't really tell people I had health problems. And like they always ask like, what do you do for a living? And that's a problematic question for myself because like the answer is never going to be good. Especially back then, before I did pad stuff, I was just even worse. I was basically just doing nothing, just in pain, doing absolutely nothing. Didn't have a productive medium to let it out. But I would just say like, I'm on a sabbatical or something like that. And like, it's like, you're 24. It's like, you don't take sabbaticals at 24. You're unemployed. Or just like, it sends the wrong message. And like, I realized that was a problem. So what I started doing eventually was I would just say, I have some health problems. It limits my mobility and ability to walk around. Are you okay with this? And just be aware that I will be asking to sit down on a bench every once in a while. And if they say no, it can suck and it hurts. But at the same time, they wouldn't have liked me anyways if we spent all that time meeting in person. But if they're okay with it and they are aware of it and they say it's fine, we can meet, and then that elephant has been addressed, like the elephant in the room has been addressed from my point of view. So it just made everything significantly easier as soon as I started telling people that this is a problem I have. They'll be either more understanding or we don't want to interact, and that's fine because I don't want to interact with someone who doesn't care about that sort of thing. So yes, be yourself. Overall, monstrous Val. Miss Dree V Us says, if someone criticizes me, how should I take it? Do you think you're not doing anything wrong, but they are just talking about themselves? Should you just say thank you or keep that in mind? I guess it depends on who it comes from because, like you said, to avoiding an argument can be beneficial. And also, you need to think to yourself, did I do something wrong? Is the criticism valid? Like, are they criticizing me for no reason whatsoever? That's a problem. Like, that's just opening up the invitation for them to like kind of walk all over you, so to speak. But if you did something wrong and they criticize you for it, your response shouldn't be to get upset. And I think that's a problematic approach that many people have because a lot of times if you tell someone they did something wrong, their first response is anger, not, oh, thank you for letting me know about that. And I think that's something you can definitely change on your own personal level. Like if I'm doing something that's not right, I would appreciate if someone tells me because it just keeps going on. And I won't get angry if I can understand why that occurred. But if it's baseless criticism, then you should stand up for yourself. You should say, like, I don't appreciate it when you criticize me when I haven't done anything fundamentally wrong. If that starts an argument, well, that is problematic. But again, you have to remember who is telling you this. If it's your parents, it's a little harder to say. But at the same time, just be polite when you say, I don't appreciate it when you criticize me needlessly. You can say I'm okay with constructive criticism or criticism that is not like nasty or hateful, but like if it's unpleasant, you need to stand up for yourself in those regards. But they says any criticism that a person made reflects more about them rather than the person being criticized. You think that's true? Well, there's definitely a certain degree of projection. Like that's why I said, is the criticism valid? If the criticism isn't valid, it oftentimes can be them projecting their faults, flaws, or insecurities on yourself, and you should definitely call them out on it. Like it's toxic behavior, and if you don't address toxic behavior in the early stages, it will just snowball and manifest into something unpleasant long term. Andy Warhol, that's a song from, I'm pretty sure that's the name of a David Bowie song, so your name weirdly piqued something in my memory. But they said they're currently seeing someone romantically. There's a lot of relationship questions this time, I feel. They want to do the nasty with her. Wow, what a polite way to say it. And I let her know. Now she thinks that I only want her for that, which is false. Well, how did you tell her about it? Was it done in a pleasant manner? But you should convey why you want to be intimate with her. Maybe say intimate. Don't say, I want to do the nasty. It gives nasty connotations. But just say, I want to be intimate with you. Like, it's not a terrible thing to do, but, like, start slow. Like, don't just, like, as Monty Python would say, don't just go stampeding towards the clitoris. I don't know why I thought of that. I think that's from The Life of Brian. But, like, don't just go right for it right away. Like, just build it up. Like, you gotta ease it into it and make them comfortable around you. And in all honesty, rushing into having sex is not needed. Like, take your time. Like, if this is someone you want to spend a relationship with, they will be there in the future still. Like, there's no need to rush. And they said, if no one wanted that, no one will be here. Well, yes, but at the same time, you don't have to do it day one. You can wait as well. And how do you make her think that you are with her because you enjoy her company and not only for her body? Well, show her that. Like, do things for her. Like, whenever you do something kind for someone, you should be doing it out of the kindness of your heart. Don't do it for ulterior motives. Like, if you're doing something nice for someone, you're doing it because you want to make them happy. And when they are happy, you should be happy too. Like, open communication is important. Husky Lover says, if I were to have 1 million magic stones and infinitely fast max skill up cards, etc., do I think I would get bored of Pad? Yes. If you have everything, it becomes boring. What makes Pad exciting is the trickle of premium currency, which in turn makes it so everything you have limited resources. And working with limited resources is what makes a game fun. If a game is easy and there's no struggle, there is no fun. The same logic can be applied to any other game. So, Husky Lover says, the reason they play Pad is to really get to new content, but of 1 million magic stones, they could easily get all the new content and no matter what, so it becomes very similar to having $1 billion in real life. You can only want to buy limited amounts of things before you don't want any more. That is definitely true. I agree. Like, I live within a certain budget financially, and I can't go extravagant and whatnot, but when I do get something nice, it's so meaningful. Like, I'll tell a nice little story. So, I love board games, and I do order them and they get delivered. And when I get a new board game, I am so excited. It's like Christmas once again, but it's like Christmas for a 5-year-old. Like, Pancake, yeah. How excited do I get when I open up a new board game?
Very.
I'm very excited. If I always got board games every day, I wouldn't be as excited. But I get them on such a rare basis that when I do, it's just like I'm freaking out. It's so much excitement. So, like, yes, the key is delayed gratification or regulated gratification. Because if you have everything, you have nothing to look forward to. And the key is you look forward to something. Looking forward to something creates excitement, creates happiness, I feel. Silver Self says, if you can have one superhero power, what would it be and how would you use that superpower? Well, superpowers, whenever I think of superpowers, I always think of X-Men. I don't know why that's the case. Like, I think maybe because that was one of the first encounters of, like, real superpowers, so to speak. And, like, when I was growing up, superhero movies didn't really exist necessarily, and X-Men were pretty cool. And I don't know why, but Professor X's power always seems mind-boggling, so to speak. Like, just the concept of having the ability to, like, read thoughts, and then obviously the more extreme is, like, controlling thoughts is pretty crazy. But then again, life might get kind of dry because you don't know what other people think. Life becomes too predictable. But it'd be pretty amazing to have for like a single day when you think about it. And now, as bad as it sounds, Professor X has mobility issues and I have mobility issues. But thankfully I still have my hair, which I like. JK Turtle says, what kind of quality of life updates would I like to see for Pad? The favorite one so far has been the stackable event medals, since they were taking about 50 space in their box prior to the update. I feel like being able to edit your team from the dungeon entering screen would be beneficial. Like, there are times where I get to the spot where I'm about to enter a dungeon and realize, oh, fish my cakes. I missed something. Gotta go back, gotta press many other buttons to get to that spot, and then I gotta press many other buttons to get back into the enter dungeon. I should be able to edit my team right before going to a dungeon. I play Fire Emblem Heroes. I can edit my team right before going into a level floor. I don't know what they're called. But point is, I can edit right in that screen. Makes your life much easier. Alright, Dark Ruler Hades says, 40-year-old virgin here. Why do women not want you? I thought it was their ideal guy. They're not looking to reproduce ever. And why do people judge me for being a virgin? And do women start families from going to the bank instead of finding a guy to start one? What is your theory on this? That's a lot of unusual questions. But why do you think you are their ideal guy? And why do you think women don't want you? I don't have an idea of what you are whatsoever. All I have to base this on is just this small YouTube comment. And what characteristics of yourself do you think have made you undesirable? Like, I think to a certain extent, people want to meet someone, have a relationship, and people want to meet someone great, of course. But at the same time, at least in my head, I believe that like calls to like, and people tend to end up being with someone that is similar to them. Similar in regards to, like, say, like, aesthetics, so the way you look, your personality, financial status, social status in society, etc. Like, it's because you have the most common ground you can mix interchangeably. So, like, are you expecting to meet, like, an actual princess person when you yourself are not that magical in itself? Are your expectations too lofty? Are you unrealistic? And you're not looking to have kids ever, which is perfectly fine. But how do people judge you for being a virgin? Is that the very first thing you tell people when you meet them? I don't know. Like, that's something that probably wouldn't come up in normal conversation, I feel. And do women start families from going to the bank instead of finding a guy to start with one? I don't understand what that means by going to the bank, because that means they find someone who's financially well off or find someone that they like. I don't understand that. Too many unusual questions here, but at the same time, I feel like maybe it might be something you need to work on your own end. Shadowa says they started a full-time job 6 months ago and they live at home. Is it fair that their parents are making them pay for rent if they're going to live at home? They want to keep all their income that if they worked for, but if their parents is making them pay rent. When I had a full-time job and living at home, do my parents make me pay rent? And if they did, would I think that's fair? Well, I never did. I moved out when I was 19, and I led a very unusual life, I'd say, starting from like 18 onward to a certain extent, like just not as typical, so to speak. So, never had that issue of dilemma of having to live with my parents long-term and pay them rent. But at the same time, it sounds like you were an adult, and sadly, being an adult has lots of responsibilities, most notably financial responsibilities. And how much rent are they charging you? And then at the same time, what are they providing you in addition to that? Are they still making food for you? Are you making all your own food? Are they doing your laundry for you? You have a room to live in as well. And also, how much is rent in your city? Are they charging you much less? Are they charging you more? Similar amounts? Because the thing is, you will want to move out at some point, and you will have to pay rent, and there's a chance it would cost you way more. So the thing is, another way you can look at it this way: paying rent to your parents is still kind of paying rent to yourself. I'm going to go out on a limb and say your parents do love you and care for you, and there will come a time in the future, most likely, they will pass away before you do. It's just most likely scenario. And obviously that is sad and problematic, but when that does occur, there will be possibly some inheritance. And that money you paid in rent will probably just come back to you anyways. So I feel like they're definitely teaching you a good lesson of, like, the real world is tough. Like, you make money, but you'll pay taxes, you'll pay rent. Are you even paying for food? Like, you are eating food too. Like, are you contributing in those regards? Maybe your rent is covering all these different aspects. So I don't think it's a bad thing, but at the same time, if you feel like your parents are walking all over you, you don't feel like you have any, like, or like decision-making prowess, because, like, you are technically contributing now to the household, that could be problematic. But if that is the situation, just be, like, express how you feel, like saying, I don't mind paying rent, but, like, I would like maybe like this sort of thing, that sort of thing. Like, the idea is, like, talk to them about it. But at the same time, again, paying rent to your parents is kind of paying rent to yourself as well. Ultra Boost says, how do I feel if Alatreon went to 10 times instead of 9 times and also getting 9,500 health? How worthy do you think this card would be? Well, I think it would make Alatreon obviously better, but it wouldn't necessarily change their usability. Like, they have too much personal damage tied to VDP. They don't have personal damage without the 3x3 box. So it's just a little bit harder, and Sena does have a much stronger active skill, stronger awakenings, better leader skill as well. Like, the point of the matter is Alatreon is just outpaced by other options available. And then finally, Pseudo Cray says, is there a multiplier cap? They've seen an outrageously high number with Albert and Nadeko. There is a multiplier cap, which is tied to the cap, the damage cap. So damage cap's like 2.14, etc., etc. And the multipliers you see over a monster's head is the number that was needed to arrive at that damage cap number. So let's use the most extreme example. Somehow you get to stack up damage to, like, whatever level it is. You then have a card with 1 attack. But somehow you can make somehow make that 1 card hit damage cap. That means the attack multiplier would have been the damage cap level or threshold. But other cards on the team who had higher attack levels or higher attack stats would show the multiplier being lower because they needed a lower multiplier to hit the damage cap number. If there was no damage cap, everyone would have the same damage cap multiplier or damage multiplier of whatever it was to achieve their end result damage number. So there is a multiplier cap number. And then wouldn't it be nice to have the shield percentage to show your health bar? Oh yeah, that would be nice. Just any information in dungeon to show me what's happening. Like, yes, tell me the boss is at like 60% health. Or maybe like, etc. Yeah, that would be so nice. Or like, yeah, there's a lot of things that could be done for sure, Pseudo Craig. And they all say thank you for all I do. And thank you for your wonderful question. So, with Pseudo Craig, that is the actual last question in my question time video. This was definitely a long video overall, and I do appreciate the questions. And they were interesting. Like, there are quite a few more like relationship-based questions, but at least they are interesting. I don't mind talking and rambling, so to speak. But either way, hopefully all have a fantastic day. I look forward to doing this at the starting of May, and happy puzzling.